Hi, it's Carrie. Last Friday I talked about how I approach the research consultation when a team contacts me for assistance with evidence synthesis. And in this 5-Minute Friday, I'm going to talk about how I work on the search. When I get time to work on the search, I'll pull up notes from our initial meeting. And I'll start building a search, usually in PubMed. This is a matter of personal preference. Other librarians in other disciplines might use other databases, and some people prefer to use Ovid Medline. So it's up to you what your primary database will be. But in the health sciences, that's usually going to be PubMed, Ovid Medline, or Embase. Because the Cochrane Handbook encourages Medline, Embase, and the Cochrane Library as appropriate resources to search, I will often build my PubMed search while I am also looking at Embase and Emtree subject headings, which are completely different from medical subject headings, otherwise known as MESH. It's a best practice to include both subject headings and keyword terms in a systematic search to capture the literature, regardless of how the authors described the topic and whether or not it's been indexed with subject headings. Both PubMed and Embase have very strong and informative indexing structures, so me not being an expert means that I can use these indexing structures to learn more about the topic and to collect additional terminology. Both indexing structures have a different hierarchical organization, but remember that the point of systematic searching is to search systematically, so you have to account for those hierarchical structures in your search. If an Emtree term has 12 terms that are narrower, but the correlating MESH term has only 3 narrower terms, then you'll need to account for that in your search with keywords or explosion or no explosion, techniques that I've discussed in the past and will link to in this video. At this building stage, there's a lot of back and forth between myself and the research team. I may make a search and send it along with a number of top results to the team for feedback. It's really important to get it right because the goal is to find all available research evidence and to not miss important things that may inform the research. We could go back and forth on terminology for a while until the team feels that the relevant literature has been captured, and I feel that the search is done in an appropriate and best practices way. Systematic reviews are often used to inform decision-making, policy-making, patient care, and more. So it's really important for me to get it right or to do my best. And I think anecdotally, that's why I get so frustrated with the quality and quantity of systematic reviews being published today. If the authors have provided key articles, which they should have, I will test my search to make sure that the key articles provided and indexed in the platforms do indeed appear in the search results. Once I've got a really good primary database search, which, as I've said, is usually PubMed or Ovid Medline paired with Embase, lately I will 100% of the time then post it for peer review in the press forum or ask a peer librarian friend if they have the time to do a search peer review for me. They'll use the press checklist to evaluate my search and look for omissions, mistakes, or errors. This can take anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks, but I have found peer review of my searches to be absolutely invaluable. It's also now considered a best practice based on the Prisma statement, the Prisma search extension, and the press checklist. Once I've received the peer-reviewed search, I make the necessary changes. This may entail some additional back and forth with both the peer reviewer and the research team. This is because new terms may get added, taken away, or changed. I then fully translate the primary database search into the other databases that I have selected for the review. This takes a lot of time as every database uses different syntax, may or may not have subject headings, which are almost always different and may work inconsistently or unreliably. The things that need to be translated are the controlled vocabulary or subject headings, syntax, and field tags. Although there are some tools that can help with this, it is still a mostly manual process. The more I work with searches, the more opportunity there is to mess it up by forgetting a quote, adding an or, taking away an or any number of issues that can cause an error in my query. Some databases will tell me when I've made a mistake and some will not. So it's critical at this point to check over my searches multiple times, usually with find and replace, and visually, to look for errors. After translation is complete, then it's time to run the searches. It is a best practice for all of the searches to be run on the same day for transparency and reproducibility. So I don't just run them as they're ready, I run them all at one time when they're all ready. There may be limits in how many records you can export from a database at one time, so you have to account for that by limiting to that number or finding a way to limit to that number so that you can export all the results in files. Once all the searches are run and exported, I upload them into EndNote and sometimes perform deduplication, which also takes quite some time because I first match on certain fields, then I match on other fields, and then I match on other fields. So it's an iterative process that takes time depending on how many results are in the file, or as EndNote calls them, library. Lately, though, I've been sending the full search results to the research teams and allowing them and encouraging them to deduplicate with Covidence or Rayon, which are both screening programs that have excellent deduplication capabilities and record keeping so that it keeps the number that you'll need for the Prisma flow diagram in the future. However, it is not over here because before I send off the search results, if we have agreed on co-authorship, I write the search methods, aligning them with the Prisma search extension. So remember that the Prisma search extension has a number of criteria that one needs to address in their search methods. And this is things like which database and which platform were used, how the searches were run, if any limits were applied, or if other filters or hedges were used, and how the results were managed, and if the search was peer-reviewed. When I send off the results, I send the search documentation with all the numbers filled out and the searches translated for each database. I send the search peer review documentation, and I send either one deduplicated file or undeduplicated files from each database. I'll also send the written search methods with notes to the team about citation and hand searching, and any other results that they may find. So this is not an easy process, and I'll say it just one more time, it does take time. If you're working with a searching librarian on a systematic or comprehensive review, please be mindful of all the things that go into this process and allow them to do their very best work for you by giving them time and feedback at every step of the way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.